I speak even less French, which is, of course, why we get along so well. I want to start and thank all of you for coming. I hope that I say one or two things that might be interesting for you, that will help you. Georges Andre told me that I cannot talk about volleyball. No coaching, no technical discussion of volleyball. So I have just a very short presentation. But I think that coaching and managing a business, at least in the world that I operate in, are remarkably similar. Not exact, but a lot of commonalities. And so I'm going to try to go through a lot of slides that I brought that show you the things that have been important to me and have helped USA Volleyball grow quite a lot in the last 10 years, which is the time that I've been in a position to direct this company. Any time that you don't understand something, please ask a question. I try to say this every time I do a presentation. It won't be very valuable if I say something that you don't understand, and it won't be very valuable if I don't answer your question honestly and directly. I try to do that. You know, sport, I think, around the world is growing significantly, very quickly. Not always the way some of us would like, but it for sure is what we call in the United States a growth industry. And international sport, maybe even more of a growth industry than in an individual country. There's an enormous amount of what we would call entrepreneurial spirit alive and well in sport. Some of that is very good. Some of that creates a lot of problems. I'll try to explain in a little bit. This is an important slide for me because it defines how, in my world, we look at my company, USA Volleyball. And it's important, I think, for you to define the world you operate in from a business point of view. So this is important for me. USA Volleyball is a very unique business. And for us, for me, it's really three different companies trying to exist together under one name. But I think that's not so different than a lot of other much larger companies who also have this situation. And I'm not going to read all the slide. I'm happy to make them all available to you. You can take all of them. But a couple of important points. In the United States, national governing bodies which are identified by our National Olympic Committee, receive no government support. Zero. Not 1 penny, not $1. So it's important for us to understand the world we operate in. And because we're a national governing body, there are in the United States 47 of those sport bodies, and they all have to buy into or subscribe to the spirit I talked to you about a few minutes ago, this entrepreneurial spirit. We are responsible for creating the revenue, the income that allows us to operate. We can't depend on the government to give us a check, which I think for many similar sport organizations creates the lack of creativity, aggressiveness, divergent thinking, the ability to understand your real purpose in the world. So for us, it's almost required. Otherwise, we'll die, we'll wither away, and we won't grow. Also, as a national governing body, we are responsible by law in the United States, by law, to the United States Olympic Committee, our National Olympic Committee. There is a federal law that means that we have to meet certain conditions to remain a national governing body. And at least one time every year, some sport in our country doesn't meet those conditions and has some problem that they have to address. So it's a serious issue for us to know the law and to conform to the criteria that our National Olympic Committee establishes. And I say this, I don't know, without trying to be funny or humorous, really. I like to be funny and humorous. But our National Olympic Committee that we are responsible to, that's 1/3 of the company of USA Volleyball, is only concerned with one thing, only one thing. Will we win a gold medal? That's all they care about. They'll talk about many other broader perspectives, many other broader objectives. But fundamentally, they're only concerned with this one overriding objective. Second, we're a national federation as defined by our international federation, FIVB. Most of you are somewhat from the world of volleyball, so you certainly know about FIVB. There are 220 national federations in the world, divided in zones. You all know this, I think, quite well. What is the objective of the FIVB? I think there are 3 principal objectives. Number one, they would like for all of the national federations to participate as broadly as possible in the full range of events that FIVB or one of the confederations organizes. That would be ideal. Of course, very few national federations do that. A few. Secondly, they would be very happy, I think, if large countries, large national federations like USA, would organize a lot of events, because all of us are looking for more organizers, more locations to grow the sport, to organize events. And third, they're looking for economic viability, economic success for that sport inside that national federation. So how do you do that? Television opportunities, a professional league, sponsorships that you can bring to the sport. So that's what that National Federation status of USA Volleyball means. Third, we're a national sport organization. And maybe, I don't know the answer to this, maybe that's the most important for USA Volleyball, for us. Because we are a member-driven organization, and we have about 350,000 active, dues-paying members. And mostly, maybe a very small number of them, are interested in international volleyball or the national teams. And even, only a very few of them, are even interested in if we win a gold medal or not. They're happy to cheer for a few minutes. They like to turn on the television and see volleyball at the Olympic Games. So, what's the point of all this? You have to know your business, you have to know your company, and if it's multi-layered like this one, how do you balance the competing objectives? And believe me, in many instances, being the national governing body competes with being the national federation, that competes with being a national sport association. How do you do that? Okay. I have a quick answer and then a very long answer. I think there are two direct ways that we have tried to deal with that. Sometimes more successfully than others. One is that you try to create programs, staff, identity, output of what you produce that goes across those issues, that goes across those definitions of who you are. But I think there's a better way. The better way is to try to identify as your mission, as your strategic objectives, the biggest picture you can define, something that encompasses in a meaningful way all three of these, and maybe some companies have more than 3, 4 or 5, I don't know. It depends on how large your company is, depends on how many staff you have, depends on your reach geographically or internationally. But for us, to try to identify what's the global picture that we can define for our business, which is our sport. So one of the things we say all the time, in every piece of material that we put out, in every speech we give, is our mission is to grow the sport. Our mission is to grow the sport. So whether we're talking to the U.S. Olympic Committee, whether we're talking to the FIVB, whether we're talking to a confederation, whether we're talking to the members, we want everybody to buy into, to become committed to, how can you play a role at this very local level in growing the sport of volleyball. For us, it's enormously, enormously important. I'm going to talk at some length about this mission. For us, growing the sport means these 3 priorities. How did we create these? Several times this afternoon, I'm going to talk about the relationship between the governance of your organization and the management of your organization, the governance and the management. These three priorities were identified in a marriage between the governance, which is represented by our board of directors. USA Volleyball has a board of directors, and management, which is the staff, the professional staff that operates USA Volleyball day to day. These are not particularly remarkable. You could have others, but you have to have them. You have to have a mission. So collectively for us, it's about growing the game. This is how we want to do it. And the most important thing for me is that we were able to collaboratively get the governance end and the management end to agree. It's, I don't know, maybe it's the most important thing we do. So a quick story. There's 47, I told you, 47 national governing bodies in the United States. The average tenure, the average duration of a leader of one of those national governing bodies is slightly less than 3 years. So nobody told me that when I took this job. So I had to find it out. But the reason is, mostly, sometimes people just leave because they find something better to do. But too often, the governance side wants to operate the company. This is generally the reason why the CEO or executive director or president, whatever title you give to that person, leaves. Usually they don't leave voluntarily. But it's a real problem for success of a company, this very rapid turnover. So I've been in this position just a little bit less than 10 years, and almost every day, I find out something about my company I didn't know. We're getting quite big in our world, complicated, and I'll explain that in a little while. But if you don't have a really good understanding of the difference between the governance of an organization and the responsibilities the governance entity has, and the operational side, the staff, it's almost impossible, I think, to be successful, and you're going to have a lot of turmoil, a lot of difficulties. So these three primary statements about our mission were created collaboratively. And every year, when we create our operating budget, we measure that budget against one of those three criteria. Every department, every line item. It's almost like a religion to us now, because that's the mentality of the board of directors with the staff. This isn't important that you can read every position here. What's important, I think, is that there is a structure to the operational staff of a company. This is ours. Actually, it's a little bigger right now. So we've grown quite a lot, and it gets harder and harder to put this on one piece of paper. That's okay. We can get bigger paper. For the staff to understand their role and who they're responsible to, this is quite important. And just a couple of quick things. I believe that the most responsible person in a company should have very, very few people, it's probably better if no one, directly reports to that person. I have a couple here. And each year, I'm trying to make it less. Because it creates some, I think, interpersonal problems overall in the company. It's better if every person can report to someone else, who then can report to someone else, etc., so that there's no privileged situation, no special situation. When I was coaching, I tried very hard for the players on the team to know that it wasn't important that they only come to me for some concern, some issue. We have a lot of staff people, which is why I like to have a big staff. I think it's very important. Bigger than you think you need at any one moment. And so your responsibility is just to manage that staff. But if every player thinks they must go to you only, it becomes a contest. We don't want a contest. We want good organization, good structure, and very clear lines of authority. Very clear lines of authority. Second, we meet, this entire staff meets once a week. Once a week. Whether I'm in the office or traveling, doesn't matter, we meet. Because we need to share information. And yes, there's wonderful tools of social media and electronic communication and all kinds of ways to do it. But face to face, we find out things that we will only learn face to face. You can't see the facial expression in an email. You can't hear the tone of someone's concern in an email. Even Skyping is less than face-to-face communication. Secondly, we have a senior group of managers that also meet once a week, because as you grow, as you become diverse, as you branch out into more and more areas, the collaboration between departments or between staff becomes more complicated, more difficult. And you almost don't even know the resources you have inside your own company. When I'm in my office, 3 or 4 times a day, I leave my office. It's a pretty big area right now, okay? And I just walk around just to make small talk, just to connect with people. Because it's important that I know as much as I can about the attitude, the emotion, the likability. There's so much about the motivation of people who are working that improves performance the more they enjoy the job, the more they like the environment they're working in. So this is part of why we do that. This is USA Volleyball's governance. This is the formal governance of how we operate. And for me, also, I think it's important to have it defined so that you can look at it on a piece of paper, make changes, also create lines of authority and responsibility. And it changes as you grow, as certain certain organs within your company become more important or less important based on all kinds of things. For us, it's generally based on programming or some problem. And so, if I could give you one thing from my talk today, one thing, I would ask you to write this down. Board governed, staff managed. It means that the responsible people, day to day, who operate your company must be, or should be for me, the professional staff. They should be hired based on their experience, passion, expertise, competence, skills, etc. The board, for us, the board of directors, is generally elected or appointed by some constituent population inside your world, inside your company. One other point I have to make. USA Volleyball, like many, probably most sports organizations, is a not-for-profit company. Big distinction, I think, in most countries between for-profit, or we generally say public companies, and not-for-profit. Big difference in tax implications, big difference in how the board is structured, big difference in having no shareholders, no responsibility for dispersing dividends, profit, loss, etc. But one very consistent responsibility of the board is the fiduciary, we say it in English, the fiduciary responsibility that the board has. Maybe it's 50%, a lot, 50% of their responsibility. They have to review the budget. They have to be sure that the company is operating appropriately to protect the assets of the company, that the staff isn't creating a budget that they have no likelihood of achieving. They're not spending money wildly. They're not behaving inappropriately. It's an enormous responsibility of the board, maybe the most important responsibility. The second one, I already talked about, is to create this big picture, the vision of where they want the company to go. So the fiduciary responsibility, the financial concerns, the big picture, the vision of the company. But it is not the board's responsibility, or it is not wise operation for the board to be involved day to day in the operation of meeting the objectives of that big picture, that vision. We've been very fortunate, but I think we work very hard at it also, to have a board of directors and a leader of the board of directors that the staff, me, senior leadership are, I don't know, pretty good like this. You know, we're pretty meshed together. We share the vision, but it's not always that easy. It's not always that. It's not easy for us either. Easy is not the right word. You really have to work at it. It's very, very important. I probably talk to the chairman of our board more than once a day normally, and we've had previous board chairmen that I would speak to 3 or 4 times a day to inform, update, make sure he's comfortable or she's comfortable with how we're operating, so that we don't have to deal with conflict when we have the board meetings. Really important, I think. This is easy, just the pyramid of how we operate. Mostly I've already spoken to you about this. I think when we put a pyramid together to discuss the success of a business, the success of a team, the foundation is probably the most important thing. The general staff, USA Volleyball right now is with interns and part-time staff, probably have close to 100 people working. When I started, we were at about 35, and one of the biggest challenges for a company is to manage growth. It's wonderful to talk about growth. How you manage it is not so easy and not so, I don't know, a bigger part of the success of the company. Anyway, the foundation of any company, I think, is the general staff, and we've been fortunate. So two other things I want to say about staff. Staff wants to be empowered. I use that word a lot. Empower staff. They want to know that their opinion is important. You trust them. You value what they think. So empowering staff is, I don't know, one of the most important things we do. And we talk a lot about, we are looking for staff that can think divergently. I don't know if that word translates very well. They think outside the box. They think in a different direction than normal people who are just going to work every day, and they arrive at 8 in the morning, they leave at 5, and they don't think about the job any other time. We're not so interested in people like that. So we want that kind of person. Second, staff wants to know, if I do a really good job, where can I go in this company? What's my potential to go higher? You know, most people like to be upwardly mobile. We say, I want to make more money. I want more responsibility. I want to supervise other people. I want to create something. I want that to be part of who I am. We think that's very important. This is just a little graph of the growth of U.S. Volleyball. It's not so important. We've grown a lot, which is great for us. We're not really trying to hide much financially. USA Volleyball, when I started, was a company with about 8.5 million US dollars in assets. Now we're about 25 million. So we've grown almost 300% in 10 years. And what's the thing I want to say? That's really nice. It means we have a little bit more flexibility, and it means, and we have to be very careful about this, it means that you can make some mistakes, which is nice. You can take some risk because you have maybe some reserves. You have some surplus amounts of money, perhaps. If you've managed the growth appropriately. So during the time, this 10 years here, USA Volleyball also created a separate company called USA Volleyball Foundation, separately managed, separately staffed, with its own independent board of directors. The sole purpose of the foundation is to support activities of USA Volleyball. So it's a kind of nice situation for us. We have this company over here that protects a certain portion of the assets of USA Volleyball, but their only mission is to support the programs of USA Volleyball. It's a nice situation for us. And when I started, zero, nothing. So we developed this foundation. This is membership growth, because it's important for us. And it looks very impressive, I think. Are any of you impressed? Maybe one or two. But this is also a problem for our sport, and a lot of sports. If you look closely at this chart, you'll see that most of the growth, an enormously large percentage of the growth, comes from only one part of the population that we service. Young girls between the age of 12 and 18. That's the biggest part of the growth. Boys are growing a little bit. Youth, very young children, a little bit. Adults, a little bit. So we have a lot of work to do to create a better balance of demographic diversity. It's a very important part for us, and it's consistent with one of the problems across the world in our sport, and a lot of sports, not just volleyball, but sports generally. This is not so relevant, but membership growth is one of the key, one of those three mission statements that I showed you at the beginning. How do we do it? How do we address it? We need to have very specific strategies and tactics. So USA Volleyball, for example, has over the last 8 or 10 years been growing about 6 to 8% a year in membership, 6 to 8% a year. What our strategy is to work with the local regions, the local operation, I'll show you that in a minute. And the goal by 2016 is to double, not the growth, not the total membership, double the rate of growth. We want to go from 7% to 15%. That's how we have to address our objectives. And then we have to have very specific strategies for how to achieve that rate of growth. USA is a big country, geographically very big, and very spread out, very diverse. We divide USA Volleyball into 40 regions. And I can tell you it's not enough. We should have more. It's a complicated governance issue to create more regions. We have an office in every one of those regions, every single one. And they have the same relationship to USA Volleyball that USA Volleyball has to the U.S. Olympic Committee. They have to meet certain criteria to remain a region, a local area of USA Volleyball. And just like any company with a lot of, I don't know what, I get in trouble when I say this word, but franchises, you know. So we're like McDonald's or Burger King And these are all the franchises out in the local areas. But our regional operation people don't like the term franchise, so I don't use it that much. Some of them operate really well, very professional, very organized, with a lot of staff and a very large budget. Some of them are really terrible. Almost no professional staff, no budget, and what is worse, no programming, no good programming in their area. So the population that might like to play volleyball or want to play volleyball in some of these areas doesn't have the same opportunity that the population has in other areas. That's a big problem for us. This is important for us to know. And this chart changes for us every year. So this is a concentration of where the volleyball clubs that register with USA Volleyball are located. We have about 6,000 clubs in the United States, about 50,000 teams, individual teams, in those 40 regions. This has changed a lot in 10 years, but it's not where it ought to be. So to meet our objectives, our mission, we need some of those white areas covered in red. It's important, and that tells us how we can target some of those areas. This is just a quick example of how you promote your product. One of the important products for USA Volleyball are events. People join a sport organization because they want to participate. So we want to provide the opportunity that our members tell us they want. So we have to really listen very carefully. Every year, USA Volleyball or one of its regions produces tens of thousands of events. But USA Volleyball, we own completely, 100%, only five that we produce at the national office that are 100% the responsibility of USA Volleyball. They have to be, we think, the best events possible, because that is the message of who we are to our membership, to the most, for us, the most important constituent population that we service. This event has grown a lot. So this year, one of our most important events grew by 100%. We made a very big change because we heard from the clubs that they didn't like the selection procedures and not enough of them could participate. Really hard to make that change because right now in our country there are only about 10 locations all over the United States that are big enough to organize this event. Has about 110 courts, goes for 10 days. It's not so easy. So we made a big change, was very difficult, but it was because I think, we listened to the membership. What do they want? These are some of the other points. It's important I mention this to you because this slide is important. Because George Andre already mentioned it. One of our objectives is to succeed internationally, to be competitive, achieve success internationally. So USA Volleyball is very proud of two things. Certainly we're very proud of gold medals. We love gold medals because the U.S. Olympic Committee loves gold medals. So we have to, but we would be happy about them anyway. What we're happiest about relative to gold medals is that we're the only country that has won a medal in every Olympic Games since 1984. And I think in some respects, 1984 was sort of the start of kind of modern volleyball, what we talk about today as the sport. New president of FIVB, television reached some maturity level. The Olympic Games became very financially successful and commercially successful anyway. So only one country, only one national federation has done that. So we're very proud of that. Sometimes beach, sometimes indoor, sometimes both. The other part that we're particularly proud of is that there are only two federations, USA and Brazil, that have qualified and participated fully with all the teams possible in every one of those Olympic Games, men and women, indoor and beach. We talk a lot about full participation. We want to be not just good in one part, because that doesn't meet our mission overall for all the constituent populations. We want to service men, women, young kids, adults, everything. So not only does USA Volleyball participate fully, this is just another slide that says the same thing. Not only do we participate fully in all of the programs FIVB offers, or the Olympic Games, USA Volleyball supports a team for the Deaf Olympics. USA Volleyball supports teams for the Special Olympics. USA Volleyball supports teams for the Blind Olympics. There are an enormous range of teams. If they're playing with USA on the uniform, we want to support that team. We want that to be part of our mission. We want that to be very broad. I talked about continuity and experience a little bit. Let me talk about two or three other things, because how much longer do we have, George? 2 or 3 hours. Okay. This is a very important heading. Just the heading here is important. It's a mantra. You know what a mantra is? Something we repeat over and over and over. To accomplish goals is harder than you think, and it takes longer than you think. We read all the time about buildings. It's over budget, takes too long to build. We want to be aware of this so that when we begin a project, when we commit money to a new venture, to a new area, we know it will take longer than we think, and it's harder. We're going to need more resources, especially for something new. Just look at the title. Don't worry about the rest. Although a couple things I'll say. Managing expectations is an enormous part of management, business or sports management. Expectations are just a little bit less important than keeping governance in governance and out of operations. How do you manage expectations? You want to let your accomplishments speak for themselves so that you don't have to do it. You want people to recognize change and success so that you don't have to hit them over the head so that they know it. Every year, for example, every year, remember those 5 events that USA Volleyball organizes? Every year we make a lot of changes in those events that we own, but we don't promote them. Mostly we don't promote them. We want the people who come to see the changes without us talking about them. If they do, we've managed expectations. If we tell them, you should see this and this and this, lots of changes, and if they don't recognize it, we've elevated expectations and we've underperformed. That's not good for a company. The other part of this slide that's important is this goal setting. So I want to talk real quickly about 2 things here. This is good. I'm not going to talk about this slide right now, so don't pay attention to it. When we create a budget within USA Volleyball, and I think we do a pretty good job, but a couple of very important processes we go through. One is that the budget is incredibly detailed. So every line on the budget, no matter how much money is in that particular line, must include a description, a verbal, written description of how that department head arrived at that number. So you can't put down $1,000 and just forget it. $1,000 because last year we only spent $800, this year we need more because we're growing. You have to define exactly how you arrived at that number. Really important. Second thing about the budget. Because we're a not-for-profit, we aren't interested in ending the year with a big surplus, a lot of money. It's okay to end with a little surplus, but our business is not to return money to the shareholders. We don't have any shareholders, no individuals. Our shareholders are the members of USA Volleyball and the constituent populations that affiliate with USA Volleyball. Our shareholders are the coaches, the players, the club directors, the managers of the teams. Those are our constituents. So we, relative to our budget, 2 times during the year, we do a very serious, I think, and extensive evaluation. We do one in April, we do one in October, because I want to know if we are likely to have a surplus. I want to use it. I want to use it this year. I want to expand programming, maybe hire new staff, maybe add some event. I want to meet our mission. I don't want to end the year with $200,000 or $300,000 that we could have used during the year to do something else with, to meet our mission. But also, I want to know early in the year if we're going to have a financial problem. If some programs are not meeting expectation, they're not attracting enough participants, costs are going up, airline travel, or any number of things. So we do a very serious evaluation twice a year on budget. The next point I want to talk about. I mentioned to you earlier about staff and how important staff is. We have a very formal process of evaluation of every staff member, 100% of them. It's done with their immediate supervisor and anyone else that staff person wants to bring into the discussion or evaluation. Every staff person has a job description that they create in conjunction with their supervisor, and it includes a list of, we call them markers. Most staff people have 10 or 12 or 15 markers or goals or objectives that they are trying to meet each year. And those markers are not something like, I want to be better. I want to do a little more of this. No, those are not acceptable markers. They have to be measurable, objective, easily definable, with a date, with a number attached, and with a responsibility that you or I could see and evaluate exactly the same way. It's really important. So we've spent a lot of time working with our staff to do that. SWOT analysis, we involve our staff in doing this. Empowering staff, most of you I think have heard of SWOT analysis. We have to know our strengths, our weaknesses, opportunities, threats, changes all the time. USA Volleyball goes through an all-staff retreat every other year. 100% of our staff comes together, 3 days. We close the office. We involve everybody in long-term planning. Lots of components of success, whether you're talking about a team or you're talking about a company. Oh, technology. I don't know that much about information technology, but in today's world, you need to be ahead of information technology. You can't be catching up. And so you need to have people inside who are looking for ways to improve communication, keeping you current with the latest technology, and probably saving you money. We talked a lot about staff already. Oh. I'm happy to share this, but yeah, if I can find it. USA Volleyball creates a strategic plan at that 3-day staff meeting that I think if you walk around our office and ask people what's the plan, they'll know. You can't be successful without a plan. The plan needs to be modified. The plan needs to be changed. It needs to be evaluated, but you've got to have a plan. We spend an enormous amount of time planning. Facilities, everybody knows about facilities. This is the new building that USA Volleyball occupies. And two things about it. It's the first time that USA Volleyball has been in a position to own our own building. So we're pretty concerned about the environment for our staff, because they're going to spend a lot of time in this environment, in this building. And inside our building, there are 3 other national governing bodies, 3 other sports. We get together with them quite regularly to do something we call best practices planning. It's as soon as you think you know everything, you've lost, I think, the battle. So we can always learn. They're pretty small NGBs. They're pretty small sports. Fencing, table tennis, and archery. But we all have something in common. We're all trying to grow. We're all trying to deal with employment issues. We're all trying to deal with membership issues, etc. So we think that's really important. USA Volleyball has 4 offices, other than the 40 regional offices. We have a dedicated office to our indoor national teams. We have a separate dedicated office to our beach programs. And we have a 4th office dedicated to our Paralympic disabled programs. And the challenge is to communicate and keep them all current with each other. And so a number of us, not just me, spend a lot of time traveling between one and the other, meeting with the staff, making sure that they're on the same page as the rest of us. One of the most important constituent populations for our sport, whether you're in the United States, Switzerland, Africa, I don't care. How do we attract very young people to the sport so that we can be competitive with the time in their life when they are making decisions about what to play? And the research that increasingly we see tells us that those decisions are made at a very young age. And lots of countries do this extraordinarily well, much better, I think, than in the United States. But our challenge in the United States is a little bit unique, I think. We have a lot of options, a lot of sports that are very well developed and are targeting young kids. And when I talk about young kids, we're thinking 5 or 6, maybe even younger. And volleyball is pretty challenging. There are some parts to volleyball that make it difficult compared to some other sports. We have some gravity involved. We have the equipment that isn't always suited to that age children. So how do we overcome some of those things? So we've worked very hard to create a response, or at least an opportunity. But the point is that in whatever business you're in, whatever business you're trying to operate, making sure you're not behind the curve to introduce your product, your sport, at an age when decisions are happening is really, really important. So we've produced what we call a sport kit, and we've made it pretty available. This is some interesting sidelight topics about where USA Volleyball wants to be by 2016. We have big goals. This is important, I think, too. Because we're a not-for-profit, because we're in the world of sports, because we have some international obligations, we think our company has a serious social responsibility component. We need to be attentive to this. There are 3 very important programs that, for me, all sports ought to be involved with, but certainly volleyball is. Safe Sport is the name of a program that is promoted by our U.S. Olympic Committee, because one of our responsibilities is to create the most knowledgeable, professional, safest environment for our children. If we want them to participate with us, they need to know, and their parents need to know, that this environment is about expertise and safety. Expertise and safety. And it's a hard message, because most of the people delivering programs are actually about how much money can they make. So you have this battle. The second part is something that's called true sport, clean sport. In our country we call it true sport, because the issues of performance-enhancing drugs and substances are embedded in our sport. So this is how we need to respond to that, a program like this. And the third one, I think, is maybe even more important. Worldwide obesity is impossible, I think, for any of us to ignore. I don't know if it's just from the United States, perhaps, but there's some really sad research now that says the current generation, the young current generation, is likely to live 5 years less than their parents. It's the first time in the last 100 years in the world when the life expectancy around the world is going down, mostly because of medical issues associated with childhood obesity. It's a big problem. How can we be involved in sport, in movement, in activity, without being involved in this? To change this cycle has to happen before children reach 10. Probably 5 is really important. So you have the deadly part of the cycle, but you also have the opportunity. We have to be involved in that. What can we do? How do we create programs? How do we embed ourselves in that? We're an event company. I'm going here. Okay. This is the end. I like to, I have certain, I don't know, authors or famous people that I like to quote some things by. You probably have never heard of this guy, okay? Daniel Burnham. He produced, he was the chief architect for the 1896 World's Fair in Chicago. Was most famous because the first Ferris wheel, remember? The first Ferris wheel was developed by a man from Pennsylvania in the United States who was named, not Wheel, but Ferris. So, okay. Anyway, I think this is important for your staff. So I have this in my office. I like this quote. But the second one, I think, is also important. And I don't know who said it, but it's amazing what you can accomplish if you're not concerned with who receives credit. It's amazing what you can accomplish if you're not concerned with who receives credit. But we think that's important. And a fairly well-known American said something like, I don't want to see the way things are and ask why. I want to imagine the way things could be and ask why not. So, you know. Anyway, thank you very much. I hope you learned one thing, and I'm happy to answer questions for ever and ever. It's one of the large picture goals that we have for USA Volleyball before the end of this 4-year cycle by 2016. I think it's extraordinarily complicated in the United States, but I also think it's extraordinarily important for the growth of our sport around the world. And so we're actually in a contractual relationship with a company that we think can have a good chance to be successful. But just me standing here talking about this has raised expectations. I have to be careful about that. But yes, it's something we would very, very much like to do.
Hi, Mr. Beal. Thank you for the presentation. I have a technical question regarding your human resources. You were mentioning that, your staff, when they come in the company, they build their own job description with their senior officer. And well, from what I know, usually when you get in the company, you're given a job description. So what made you go in this direction, and what do you think it brings to the organization?
Yeah. When we hire someone, we certainly do exactly what you described. We're looking for someone to fill a position. So they start with a job description. But after 1 year or sometimes less, we want them to fulfill that responsibility. But the very best people you have are people who grow their area of responsibility because of their talent, creativeness, diligence, work ethic, etc. And generally, those are the people who are the stars of your organization. They take what you give them and they go far beyond what you would have normally expected them to do. Believe me, with almost 100 people, we don't have 100 stars for sure, but we have a lot of stars. And you need to create the environment, the motivation, to encourage them to do that. So there's a couple of boxes around USA Volleyball's offices, just little suggestion boxes. And you don't have to write your name, you just put something in. We take that very seriously. We really try, and I think every company wants to do this. You want to create a situation where the people, they can't wait to get to work in the morning. And I travel a lot, and I'm in and out of the office. So sometimes I'm there Saturday or Sunday or late in the evening. I'm never there by myself, never. It's one of the things we're most proud of, and that people want to stay a long time with USA Volleyball. We have some people that have been there much longer than me, 30 years, 35 years. It's, there's something called institutional knowledge. Boy, you don't want to lose institutional knowledge. And again, not everybody is going to meet those expectations, but the more that do, the better performing your company will be. So, but people create their own job description gradually over time, and it's a really important part, I think, of happy employees.
Est-ce qu'il y a encore une question?
Excusez-moi tout d'abord, j'ai appris l'anglais par M. Carrel. C'est la raison pour laquelle je me permets de vous interroger en français. Pour une fédération si prestigieuse que celle du volleyball américain, il est normal d'avoir des buts et des objectifs ambitieux. Vous avez toutefois relevé que, par exemple, vous agissez dans un but plus social pour essayer de combattre l'obésité. Cela signifie-t-il donc que dans une fédération si prestigieuse que la vôtre, il y a encore une place pour la devise du baron de Coubertin, l'essentiel ou principal est de participer. Et puis, j'aurais une deuxième question un peu provocatrice à laquelle je m'empresse de dire que vous ne seriez pas tenu de répondre. Est-ce que USA Volleyball a placé des fonds dans des banques suisses?
Not yet. Let me see if I can share this. So USA Volleyball, as you mentioned, is a very broad-based organization with a lot of different components. And to answer the question, one of the priorities is not that every program must make a financial profit. We should invest what we're capable of investing in, I think, appropriate social issues, mostly that are connected to our business, which is sport, movement, good health, etc. And one of the problems that USA Volleyball has, we have many problems, but one of the problems is that in the United States, there are perhaps 20 or 30 million people who play volleyball on some regular basis. Most of them play for social, recreational, or health reasons. But we only have 350,000 direct members of USA Volleyball. So we have a long way to go to connect with that other population, much larger. And if I had an organization of 10 million or 20 million, we could be so much more impactful in promoting positive social values. One of the reasons, this is a really good study that was done partially by Nike, but you don't see Nike logo here, no swoosh here, just a big one, I guess, around the front. And the NCAA, it's a very big organization in the United States for university sports, and USA Tennis. Tennis is quite popular, I think, in Switzerland. One of the reasons that so many people do not join a national governing body like USA Volleyball, or even want to participate in sports, is it's not perceived as fun. We have a lot of work, I think, all of us who are involved in sport, to not be positioned as just elite, the top of the pyramid. We want kids to participate in something. We hope it's volleyball, but something, because if we don't, our world, I think, for all of us, is going in a not such good direction. So I would never tell you that we're doing everything we can. We are not. But collectively, all the 220 national federations in our sport, the resources of the confederations, the resources of FIVB, and you spread that across the United Nations has a very important youth sports initiative. All of the other international federations, ANOC, Sport Accord, etc., etc. We have huge, huge resources. If we put them together and create a real global initiative just to get kids to move, we could change this deadly cycle into a cycle of opportunity and health. We have to play the role. We have to play our role, USA Volleyball, and every other federation. I think it's very important. So we're willing, you know, I say our budget is about $25 million. We estimate that about 5% of that is just directly to be used for not a financial return, but a social investment, about 5%. Some years a little more, some years a little less.
Est-ce qu'il y a encore une question, Bertrand?
Hi, Luc. You said that you want less person directly reporting to you, and at the same time, you said that you like get out of your office 3-4 times a day just to chat with people. So how do you manage that? Because don't you incite people just reporting to you at the same time?
When I say I don't want people to report to me, it's I don't want to be their main supervisor. I want them to report directly to some other senior staff person. But I have to walk around the office just so I know the names of people. Sometime last year, I stopped doing it. I don't know. And we wound up with, I don't know, 5 or 6 people I didn't even know. I went, who's this person sitting over here? You know, who's over? Anyway, that's not so good, I think. And I think it's important that we talk about an open door policy. And so I don't want people to have to make an appointment to see me. I want them to walk in. You know, maybe I'm on the telephone or I'm, you know, doing email or computer, but we're still small enough that we should know everybody. And when I say almost 100, about 60 in Colorado Springs, the main office, about 15, 20 in the national team, about 10 in the beach program, and then we have some interns and people coming and going. One of the very interesting fields of study in the United States right now is called sports management. Very popular. It's growing a lot. More and more universities are adding this field of study. Every year we have 5 or 6, sometimes 10 students who spend some time with USA Volleyball. It's great for us because they're currently studying, I hope, the latest information, the most up-to-date strategies for sports management. And because I told you already, we're a not-for-profit, we're a national governing body in our world. We're pretty unique, so it's really good for us to hear all of these different ideas. Some of the students are wonderful, some are not so good, but you never know until you hire them. But we really like to have this exchange of ideas. Very, very good for us. So.
Oui. Coach.
Yeah. I'm shocked it took him this long to ask.
I will be quick. First of all, I thank you so much. That's a question because I played many times against the United States. I always lost, but okay, that's not the point. You speak about the great budget, but I don't see any sponsor in the t-shirt. I mean, you play against Brazil, there is Banco de Brazil. You play against Italy, you see Kinder. And you speak about amazing budget.
Yeah.
How do you get this money? Because my federation can take some tip and the funding.
No, it's a very good question, Vani, because we have some sponsors, For example, Mizuno, Moulton, Hilton Hotels, Liberty Mutual Insurance. We have a list on our website you can see. But it's only about, I think, less than 10% of our budget. Less than 10%. So if you identify USA Volleyball and you say, what kind of a company are you? Principally, we are a company of events. We produce a lot of events. I mentioned how many, but some of them really financially successful. And there are a lot of different revenue streams that come from events. So we receive no government money, but some from U.S. Olympic Committee. Also, less than 10%, about 8% of our budget. And so events is about just a little bit less than 60%, 60%. And we're growing events all the time. Recently, a lot of outdoor events, not just beach, some beach, also grass, very popular in the United States, because we want to broaden the affiliation of members to USA Volleyball. And we produce the high performance championships. I think you know this event. Boys championship, adult championship, girls championship, 5 or 6 pretty successful now beach programs. And we have a licensing relationship with a lot of other events. So we receive some guaranteed revenue because we give them the right to use USA Volleyball marks as part of their program. So, yeah, but we need to increase the sponsorship in a very targeted way. Volleyball needs to connect with major retail companies. We have plenty, we call them endemic sponsors. Endemic sponsors are the tools that we all have to use. We need more. We need Coca-Cola, McDonald's, United Airlines, Honda Cars is a good one. FIVB just made an agreement. Because we have a great story to tell, and because we connect around the world with hundreds of millions of people. Hundreds of millions of people. Maybe more than any other sport, maybe. I don't know, between volleyball and soccer, football, it's very close, I think. We have a great story to tell, you know. Not so many injuries, not so many drug problems, you know. Really diverse sport, men, women, children, healthy sport, socially important, because I think team sports have a very unique story to tell. For all of these other social reasons, I think volleyball can be a very important player in this. So.
Voilà, je crois qu'on va arrêter ici. J'aimerais juste dire 4 merci. Madame, un immense merci pour la traduction. Vous avez travaillé dans des conditions difficiles.